Greetings, fellow seekers of truth and unravelers of ancient enigmas. Welcome to Ancient Relics Keeper, where history's most profound secrets await your keen discovery. The bleeding stigmata. Can humans truly believe in the stigmata, the sacred wounds of Jesus Christ, and the miraculous powers that lie within them? Marie Rose Farron was the first person in the United States ever reported to bear these divine marks on her body. She was born in Canada in the year 192, but she spent most of her life in Rhode Island, United States. Raised in a devout Catholic family, Marie displayed extraordinary religious fervor from a very young age. As a child, she claimed to have seen visions of Jesus Christ appearing before her. No one could ever verify whether these visions were real or simply the product of a deeply religious child's imagination. But Marie's life soon took a tragic and shadowed turn. At the age of 12, she fell seriously ill, losing all function in her right arm and left leg. A debilitating stomach disorder made it impossible for her to consume solid food. Then came tetanus, locking her jaw and plunging her into constant, unbearable pain. By the year 1925, Marie was confined to her bed, immobilized and bound in place to prevent self-injury during violent seizures and contorted spasms. None of the doctors could explain what was happening to her. One day, Father Gaudier paid her a visit and introduced her to the spiritual concept of redemptive suffering, that the more pain a soul endures, the greater its salvation. With that belief, fear of pain could be transformed into a promise of reward in the next world. After the priest's visit, Marie willingly offered herself as a victim soul, embracing suffering on behalf of others. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Marie began to absorb the pain and illnesses of those who came to see her. Whether it was the agony of childbirth or the torment of addiction, she took it upon herself. Gradually, within the community, Marie came to be seen as a living symbol of holiness. By the end of 1926, Marie received what the Church regarded as a sacred honor: the appearance of stigmata on her body. It began with wounds on her arms, and during Lent in 1927, bleeding marks emerged on her hands and feet, mimicking the crucifixion wounds of Christ. By January of 1928, wounds from a crown of thorns appeared around her forehead. Every event was witnessed and documented. Even photographs were taken of Marie bearing these wounds. But the wounds didn't stop. In 1928, she received another injury, this time over her heart. By August, she began weeping blood reminiscent of Christ's own agony in the Garden of Gethsemane. These miracles and wounds continued to manifest until Marie's death in April of 1936, just 1 month shy of her 34th birthday. By then, her suffering had driven her to the brink of madness. When she passed, she was completely blind and deaf. More than 4,000 people attended her funeral. Yet, Marie's story did not end with her death. In 1947, her grave was exhumed and her body was found perfectly preserved with no signs of decay. A non-dying corpse has long been seen as a sign of sainthood. But Marie was never canonized. The Church investigated her life twice to consider sainthood, but both inquiries ended in silence. Their findings were never made public. Despite bearing the stigmata for 10 years and leaving behind an incorrupt body, Marie was never declared a saint. To this day, no one truly knows what the Church uncovered that caused them to permanently seal Marie's case. Many faithful still campaign for her official canonization. The volcano and the Dark Age. In the year 536 AD, the Byzantine historian Procopius recorded that a dense fog had completely blotted out the sun. He wrote that the sky seemed suffocated, the light had vanished, and the Mediterranean world was plunged into darkness. According to Procopius, the world turned cold and gloomy for an entire year. Coincidentally, that very same year marked the beginning of the Justinian plague, one of the most devastating pandemics in recorded history, occurring nearly a full millennium before the infamous Black Death. In just a single year, the plague claimed the lives of around 25 million people across the Byzantine Empire and continued its deadly rampage for 2 more centuries, killing another 25 million people by the year 750. The events of 536 are now considered by many historians to represent the darkest moment in human history. But what could have caused the sun to vanish, crops to fail, and pestilence to spread so quickly? It wasn't just pre-copious records from Ireland to China also confirmed that the skies that year turned pitch black. Crops failed across Europe and even as far as the Moche civilization in Peru. Teotihuacan collapsed. Entire empires suffered catastrophic consequences. For decades, scientists puzzled over the cause. The leading theory was that a series of massive volcanic eruptions occurred in close succession, unleashing a blanket of dust that encircled the planet. And now they found the evidence to prove it. Ice cores taken from Greenland and Antarctica reveal a distinct layer of sulfate dated precisely to the year 536. This acidic layer was formed by volcanic debris launched into the atmosphere so dense that sunlight could no longer penetrate through. Even Antarctica was coated in a thick sheet of volcanic ash. This is now considered irrefutable proof. A cataclysmic volcanic eruption occurred in 536, triggering a prolonged famine and laying the groundwork for the Justinian plague. Although the exact volcano responsible has yet to be definitively identified, researchers strongly suspect it was Mount Iloango in present-day El Salvador. The 70 disciples. How many disciples did Jesus truly have? Most people only know about the 12 mentioned in the Bible. Yet, history has nearly forgotten a much larger group. In reality, Jesus once had more than 70 disciples as referenced in the Gospel of Luke. According to Luke, Jesus assembled 70 disciples and gave them a special mission to go out in pairs and spread his teachings across the land. While most biblical manuscripts state the number as 70, some versions list it as 72. This number isn't arbitrary. It appears repeatedly throughout Abrahamic religious traditions. For instance, the Hebrew Bible records 70 nations descended from the 3 sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The descendants of Noah's sons like Elilam, Asher, Aram, Cush, and Canaan each gave rise to entire nations. The Elamites, the Assyrians, the Canaanites, even Canaan's sons such as Het, Jebus, and Amorite became the namesakes of ancient civilizations like the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites, groups that played vital roles in early human history. The 70 disciples of Jesus were believed to be missionaries tasked with preaching to each of the nations and descendants mentioned in the book of Genesis. The Bible carefully outlines the genealogies of these peoples, explaining how humanity spread across the earth after the Great Flood. Names like Havilah, believed to have founded Nubia, founder of Tai, and Ashkenaz, forefather of the Scions, all trace their origins to this lineage. The demons of King Solomon, supernatural entities capable of manipulating human thought. The first woman ever prosecuted for witchcraft, and the strange tale of Maria the Mystic. These are the shadowy chapters of Christianity that the Church prefers to keep hidden. The history of demons. Solomon's demon slaves. Have we ever stopped to wonder where demons truly come from? The journey begins with King Solomon, who ruled the Kingdom of Israel from 977 to 927 before Christ. His image appears in all 3 of the world's major religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Regardless of doctrine, all 3 share the same legend that King Solomon possessed the power to summon and enslave demonic spirits. Could such extraordinary powers have ever been real? According to ancient religious texts, Solomon not only imprisoned demons, but forced them into servitude, commanding them to build mighty temples in Jerusalem. These demons, it was said, carved the stone, transported the timber. Solomon could even communicate with angels. This was nearly 1,000 years before the birth of Christ, a time when the people of Israel still regarded angels and demons as part of their everyday reality. Back then, becoming a magician, someone who commanded demonic spirits, was not considered a sin, nor was it a crime punishable by death. Solomon passed his arcane knowledge down to 4 chosen successors known as the Circle of Four: Fortunat, Mardos, the Greek, and Elaza of the East. From these men came the first magical manuscripts. They carefully recorded the incantations and spells that Solomon had entrusted to them, preserving the texts for future generations. Each one of them likely trained disciples of their own, expanding and revising the material, laying the foundation for a tradition of magical books that would be passed down through the centuries. Many of those ancient manuscripts still survive today, including one called the Testament of Solomon. Some believe it to be the oldest grimoire in existence, likely written in the 3rd or 4th century after Christ, more than 1,000 years after Solomon's death. Yet, scholars claim that the spells within it are based on the very same incantations the king once used. These spells were primarily vocal, spoken aloud with specific tones and emphasis. Solomon called them the words of power. Occasionally, rituals required physical movements, but over centuries of translation, many of these instructions became confusing or incomplete. In the Testament of Solomon, the king is said to have subdued 60 demons. The first was a minor demon named Amos who was caught draining the life force from a servant. Solomon received aid from the archangel Michael to trap the creature, and Michael was also the one who granted him the divine knowledge to command the others. The words of power often included the names of angels, as if Solomon was invoking the forces of heaven to conquer the shadows. For over 1,000 years, magic was seen as a divine service. Solomon used angelic power to summon and control demons in the name of God. But as Christianity grew stronger, everything began to change. By the end of the Middle Ages, the narrative had been reversed. Magic was no longer a gift from God, but a tool of evil and of demons themselves. The giant monster birds, colossal fossils unearthed in Antarctica, have revealed a terrifying predator that once soared across the skies of the frozen continent. The fossilized bones belong to the oldest known member of a now extinct bird species called the pelgorn, a creature that once ruled the southern oceans with wingspans reaching up to 21 feet. That's an extraordinary achievement, especially by today's standards. The largest bird alive now, the wandering albatross, has a wingspan of just over 11 feet. It's no wonder the pelgorn resembled an albatross only several times its size. This monstrous bird thrived across the globe for nearly 60 million years. What's even more fascinating is the fossil's age. Scientists determined that these monster albatrosses appeared just 1 million years after the extinction of the dinosaurs, almost immediately after the giants disappeared. A new winged behemoth took to the skies. According to Peter Close of the University of California, Berkeley, the giant albatross was the apex predator of the oceans for millions of years. With no real competition, the pelgorn was like a shark in the sky. Even more frightening, its beak was lined with jagged tooth-like projections, bony spikes made of keratin. Not true teeth, but terrifying enough to frighten any creature that crossed its path. The wine fountain, at a Roman winery recently unearthed near Rome. Archaeologists uncovered evidence that some Romans once lived in levels of luxury that defy the imagination. The excavation took place at the villa of the Quintili family, a sprawling architectural complex just beyond the boundaries of the ancient city. This estate was built in the 3rd century after Christ, and is believed to have once been the empire's premier wine production facility. Its scale far surpasses that of any winery ever discovered in the ancient world. Historical records show the villa belonged to the Quintili brothers, wealthy winemakers, who both held the office of consul in the year 151. They owned nearly 60 acres of land and lived in glory until they were assassinated under the orders of Emperor Commodus around the year 182 or 183. The reason Commodus envied their overwhelming success. After eliminating the brothers in a manner not unlike a mafia boss, he seized their villa and winery. redecorating it with lavish marble, colossal statues, elaborate architecture, and even a public bath complex. But he didn't stop there. The emperor also built his own private arena on the estate grounds to host chariot races. In the year 2017, as archaeologists began excavating this arena, they stumbled upon the remains of the winery, a grape-stomping floor, 2 enormous wine presses, vats for holding grape juice, and most astonishing of all, a decorative fountain that flowed with wine. Fresh grape juice was piped from the vats and sprayed from the ornate fountain, then trickled through carved stone channels into a system of underground lead pipes. The entire area was paved in intricately patterned marble and adorned in vivid color. This wasn't merely a winery. It was a stage of extravagance where grape juice poured like the nectar of the gods at any moment. The giant monster egg, a strange fossil recently discovered in Antarctica, has been identified as a gigantic egg laid by a prehistoric marine reptile nearly 66 million years ago. The egg had been forgotten in storage at Chile's National Museum of Natural History until a team of scientists from the University of Texas arrived to study it, only to uncover something truly unexpected. Measuring nearly 12 in length, it is now recognized as the largest soft-shelled egg ever found. It also ranks as the second largest egg of any animal species to have ever existed on Earth, second only to the largest dinosaur egg. Paleontologists are confident that the egg belonged to a now extinct marine giant, known as a mosasaur. Given its extraordinary size, it clearly came from a true sea monster. Although its dimensions rival those of a dinosaur egg, its shape and structure do not match any traditional dinosaur specimens. According to researcher Lucas Leandra, the egg resembles that of a snake or a lizard, except it is vastly larger, easily bigger than a human head, and far exceeding the size of any reptile egg found today. Scientists have yet to determine the exact species that laid the egg, but one thing is certain. It belonged to a massive prehistoric marine creature, the frozen Earth. In the long history of our planet, there were at least 2 periods during which the entire Earth was encased in ice from the North Pole to the South. These were moments when the blue planet became a giant frozen orb, a lifeless world without sunlight, without greenery, without life, or so humanity once believed. These 2 ice ages occurred more than 500 million years ago, long before complex life had even begun to crawl onto land. For decades, scientists debated what Earth's environment was like during that time. Could life have survived beneath such absolute cold? Or had it all been buried under the eternal ice? One theory suggested that Earth was completely lifeless during those glacial ages. But others argued that some biological oases might have endured places where sunlight managed to pierce the ice, allowing fragile life to persist below the ocean surface. Recently, a team of researchers from China and the United Kingdom announced discoveries that shocked the scientific world. They proposed that during Earth's deep freeze, a narrow band of open water may have remained around the equator, an area not entirely covered by ice. Within deep sediment layers beneath ancient ice in China, the team discovered microossels of living organisms, creatures known as Kiatoros. These organisms can survive without light, relying instead on chemicals from deep-sea vents. They may be the living proof that life managed to persist even through the most extreme glaciation, nearly 650 million years ago. This is true. It means that even under total ice coverage, Earth could still support life. The cause of the planet's descent into such a frozen state remains a mystery. Some scientists suspect the collapse of the greenhouse effect, or a feedback loop of sunlight reflection off the ice as possible triggers. But to this day, no final answer has been reached. The tomb of Jeremiah. On a remote hillside in Ireland, an ancient burial mound has been discovered, possibly the final resting place of one of the Bible's most renowned prophets. This is Coranty, a stone tomb located in an isolated windswept landscape far removed from the modern world. Coranty rests atop a lush green hill overlooking a vast open plain. sparsely populated and rarely visited by tourists. But far off on the horizon, one can still glimpse the Hill of Tara. The Hill of Tara is a famous site. Once the royal seat of the High Kings of Ireland thousands of years ago in ancient times. It was a center of political and spiritual power. Kings were crowned here. Those of high status were buried beneath towering stones, and primitive villages dotted the surrounding region. But what could all of this have to do with a prophet from the Bible? That prophet is Jeremiah, the figure from the Old Testament, who is believed to have fled Jerusalem in the year 587 before Christ, carrying with him the sacred Ark of the Covenant. Jeremiah had warned the Jewish king that the Babylonian Empire would destroy them if they did not repent. He was imprisoned for his prophecies, and in the end he was proven right. Jerusalem was destroyed and the first temple fell. There are no official records of what happened to him afterward. But legend claims he escaped with the Ark of the Covenant and journeyed to Ireland. He is said to have brought with him 2 daughters of the Jewish king, who later married into the bloodlines of Irish royalty, the Windsor family, of which Queen Elizabeth II was a direct descendant, has even claimed to trace its ancestry back to Jeremiah's journey. The British royal family has long believed itself to be descended from the House of David in Jerusalem, a lineage that astonishes many. Guarantee might be Jeremiah's tomb. Or it might not be. Experts have yet to reach a conclusive answer. But the site continues to attract visitors drawn by its enduring mystery. The face on the cliff. Deep in a forest on a Canadian island, a strange mystery has emerged from the wilderness. A stone face was discovered jutting out from a cliff near a coastal town on Vancouver Island. It may be a relic of an ancient indigenous tribe, but no one knows who carved it, when it was made, or whether other secrets still lie hidden in the woods. To be honest, no one has yet been able to say for certain whether the face is man-made or a natural formation shaped by time and erosion. Yet, its human-like features are so precise that it's hard to believe it could be a mere coincidence of nature. Frederick C., leader of the Beach Guardians of the Tissue-Cursed First Nation community, admits he too is uncertain about the face's origins. However, he believes his ancestors likely knew of its existence. Perhaps they viewed it as the work of a civilization even older than their own. Or perhaps when they first saw the stone formation, they imagined a human face and decided to carve it into being. The indigenous peoples have lived on Vancouver Island since time immemorial. Around the area near the town, more than 300 archaeological sites have been identified. So, finding a carved head in the wilderness dating back thousands of years is not entirely out of the question. What is strange, however, is the location. The face is situated in such an isolated spot that it wasn't discovered until the year 2008 by a kayaker from Washington. For years afterward, locals searched but could not find it again until it was recently rediscovered by chance. It lies about 40 feet above the water, now nearly hidden beneath overgrown vegetation on the cliff face. The caves beneath the ice. From above, Antarctica looks like a seamless white blanket of ice. But beneath its surface lies an unexplored world, like a massive cathedral hidden deep under a frozen crust. Roughly 500 miles from the Antarctic mainland lies the Cam Ice Stream, a vast and rapidly melting glacier in West Antarctica. As the ice melts, it draws the glacier away from the continent and forms a floating ice shelf that stretches hundreds of miles into the sea. Beneath this extraordinary shelf lies a world no human had ever reached. Under nearly 700 meters of ice sits a slushy wetland laced with slow-moving subglacial rivers flowing out toward the ocean like a swamp sealed inside a massive frozen stone. Until recently, no one had ever glimpsed this hidden world. In the year 2021, a group of New Zealand scientists decided to take the risk. They drilled through the ice and lowered a camera. Craig Stevens, a member of the team, still remembers the first moment he looked through that borehole. The screen revealed icy walls like staring down a frozen tunnel. The camera hovered at the bottom of the shaft, 488 m deep, just a few meters below the ice ceiling. It was one of the greatest scientific discoveries ever made in the Southern Hemisphere. For the next 2 weeks, the team lowered instruments to explore the cave, uncovering signs of flooding and massive underground lakes. It was a world completely sealed off from the rest of the Earth. If you've ever heard of the hollow Earth theory, this is the closest science has come to something like it. Though without any King Kong, scientists found an isolated environment with its own lakes and possibly its own species. Even more astonishing, 98% of Antarctica remains buried under ice that no one has explored. The New Zealand team's borehole was only 488 m deep, while in many areas the ice can be nearly 5 kilometers thick. Who knows what lies beneath? So far, over 600 subglacial lakes have been identified, and countless mysterious lands remain hidden. Could there be monsters or relics of an extraterrestrial civilization? Time may hold the answer. The giant gold nugget. In the wilds of Australia, an anonymous man had a life-changing encounter with luck itself. Armed with nothing more than a cheap metal detector and a vague dream of striking it rich, he dug up a heavy lump of pure gold. The nugget was estimated to be worth between $150,000 and $200,000. It was discovered in a region known as the Golden Triangle, a remote expanse filled with abandoned gold mines. Once the epicenter of a 19th-century gold rush, the unnamed man brought a portion of the gold to a local shop hoping to sell it for around $10,000. But when the piece landed in the hands of shop owner Darren Camp, he was stunned into silence. Darren, a veteran gold prospector with nearly 50 years of experience, called it a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. In all his decades of searching, he had never seen a gold nugget like this one. While it wasn't the largest nugget ever found back in the year 2020, a group of miners in southern Australia uncovered 2 nuggets worth nearly $300. It was still considered an invaluable treasure for an amateur. The tomb of the physician. A recent excavation in Hungary has revealed an ancient tomb belonging to a physician who lived 2,000 years ago. The grave dates back to the time of the Roman Empire and contains surgical instruments so refined they suggest the man once performed highly complex procedures. The tomb was discovered near the city of Jastaneru by archaeologists from the Faculty of Humanities at Edvos Lorand University. Using magnetometers to scan the terrain, the team detected signs of a buried structure. When digging began, they opened the tomb for the first time in 20 centuries. Inside they found the nearly intact skeleton of the physician, his skull, leg bones, and numerous other remains. But the true treasure lay in 2 ancient wooden chests. Inside them was a full set of medical instruments: pliers, scalpels, sewing needles, replacement blades, and even sharpening stones to maintain precision. The tools were taken to a laboratory for further study. Researchers confirmed that it was a complete Roman medical kit. The scalpels were made from copper alloys and engraved with exceptional craftsmanship. The doctor died at an estimated age of between 50 and 60, though the cause of death remains unclear. The bones showed no signs of trauma or disease, suggesting he may have died of old age. This was only the second complete Roman medical kit ever discovered. The other was unearthed in the ruins of Pompeii, the city buried by a volcanic eruption in the year 79 AD. And gulas from the local museum said it is still unknown whether the physician was native to the area or a member of a Roman legion. It's possible he was a battlefield doctor traveling with soldiers and treating their wounds during military campaigns. The mystery of the ancient maps. One of the most significant maps in world history was drawn in the year 1513 by a Turkish pirate who was later executed for treason. This map is important because it depicts Antarctica free of Icelanding, surprising support to Charles Hapgood's pole shift theory, which claims the Earth's poles shifted roughly 12,000 years ago. That pirate was Piri ibn Matter, born in the year 1470 and executed in 1554. His famous map is known as the Piri Race Map. While many have heard of it in connection to the mysteries of Antarctica, Few know that this map is only a fragment of a much larger original work. Piri Reis's life is known through scattered records. He began as a pirate, but later rose to become an admiral in the Turkish Navy, creating detailed charts of the Mediterranean and a world map painted on gazelle skin. Over the centuries, the world map was cut in half. Only the lower portion survives, showing the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean islands, and the eastern coast of South America, complete with illustrated animals along the Brazilian shoreline. At the bottom of the map lies the coastline of Antarctica, a continent not officially discovered until the year 1818. Traditional history records that Antarctica was discovered 300 years after the creation of the Piri Reis map. Even Ferdinand Mellon had not yet completed his first circumnavigation of the globe, a journey that took place between 1519 and 1522. Though killed in the Philippines, Mellon proved the Earth was not flat. Piri Reis claimed that he based his masterpiece on 20 ancient source maps. Even though he had never set foot in Antarctica, his work was entirely derived from studying older maps. In the year 1956, a copy of the map was gifted by the Turkish Navy to the U.S. Navy Hydrographic Office, which passed it along to Captain Arlington H. Mallory. Mallory discovered that the map accurately depicted Antarctica's current ice-covered shoreline. He theorized it was based on charts from a time when Antarctica was ice-free. When Charles Hapgood heard about it, he conducted further research with students from the University of New Hampshire. They concluded that the Piri Reis map and other medieval maps might be reproductions of even more ancient originals. And it wasn't the only map to depict Antarctica before its official discovery. Hapgood also found similar renderings on a map from the year 1538, on the Boos map of 1754, and on the Orontius Venus map of 1532. One of these maps even contained the phrase "the southern continent, newly discovered, but not yet fully known." That caption suggests someone had circled Antarctica and sketched the landmass 5 centuries earlier. To this day, scientists haven't reached a definitive conclusion, and neither have mystery enthusiasts. Was Antarctica ice-free 500 years ago? Or were medieval crafters simply copying ancient charts passed down from a civilization that already knew this land in detail? Baphomet and the ancient symbols. When the Satanic Temple unveiled an 8.5-ton statue of Baphomet in Detroit, hundreds of people gathered to protest. The bronze sculpture, which cost $100,000, is disturbing at first glance. A genderless creature with both male and female traits seated on a throne flanked by 2 smiling children. With a goat's head, angelic wings, and 2 serpents coiled around a rod at its chest. It resembles a demonic Santa Claus from the depths of hell. The name Baphomet first appeared in the 11th century when French crusaders misheard Muslim warriors shouting the name Muhammad, mistaking the prophet's name for that of a dark god. The Knights Templar introduced Baphomet into Western lore as a symbol of evil. In the year 1856, French occultist Elias Lévy drew Baphomet in his book Transcendental Magic, its doctrine and ritual. That image became the inspiration for the modern Satanic Temple's bronze statue. Baphomet is neither a true deity nor a real demon. It is a symbol layered with deeper symbolism. The statue's 2-finger hand gesture is a familiar sign among Renaissance-era occultists, meaning as above, so below. A phrase from the ancient writings of Hermes Trismegist, the father of alchemy and arcane magic. Some believe Hermes was the human embodiment of the Egyptian god Thoth, though no one knows for sure. Baphomet embodies some of the most powerful symbols of antiquity. It's little wonder the Church has long sought to erase its presence from the world. The ancient Black Britain. 10,000 years ago, the first modern humans set foot on the British Isles. They were the direct ancestors of modern-day Britain, who are for the most part light-skinned. Yet, a recent study has revealed quite the opposite. The post-Ice Age inhabitants of Britain likely had dark skin, possibly even black. Scientists have just completed a DNA analysis of the oldest complete human skeleton, ever found in Britain. The remains of Cheddar Man. He was discovered over a century ago in a damp, shadowy cave in the Somerset region. Cheddar Man was one of the earliest settlers to cross from mainland Europe and establish roots in Britain after the ice began to retreat and woolly mammoths started dying out. It was a time when the land was warming and the world was slowly transitioning out of the Ice Age. Throughout the 20th century, scientists widely assumed that Chedman must have had light skin and blonde hair just like his modern descendants. But modern genetic technology has painted a very different picture. All the evidence now points to this. Cheddar Man had blue eyes, black curly hair, and dark brown to black skin. This discovery proves that the genes responsible for lighter skin tones had not yet become widespread in European populations. In fact, some researchers are beginning to question whether skin color has anything to do with geographic origin at all. Despite what modern society tends to believe, Tom Booth from the Natural History Museum suggests that today's obsession with race is a modern social construct and completely inappropriate for interpreting the ancient past. Especially in Europe, the DNA of Cheddar Man shows that 10,000 years ago, Europeans had skin as dark as their African relatives. And if that seems hard to believe, Cheddar Man's journey may offer some clarity. His people came out of Africa, the birthplace of Homo sapiens. From there, our ancestors traveled into the Middle East, spread across Europe, and crossed the land bridge into the British Isles, where they settled and built a life. Only after many thousands of years living in this misty, sunny-starved land did ancient Britain begin to evolve lighter skin. It was an adaptation designed to help their bodies absorb enough sunlight to produce vitamin D. Had Britain been a sunnier place, modern Britain might still be dark-skinned today. The Jealous Duke. A team of scientists recently set out to trace the origin of lager yeast, a strain used extensively in beer production. This curious investigation led them back to the Middle Ages to a bizarre incident involving a furious duke and a destroyed brewery. What they discovered is that lager yeast, the distinctive cold fermentation strain, actually came into existence during the 17th century entirely by accident and driven by jealousy. Experts had long known that lager yeast was a hybrid of two different yeast species, but no one had been sure when or how the fusion had occurred. In Bavaria, bottom fermenting yeast had been used since the 14th century, but in the year 162, a mix-up occurred. This yeast was accidentally blended with top fermenting yeast used to make wheat beer. At the time, Bavarian law mandated the use of bottom yeast only except for Hans V. Sixth von Denberg, who held a special royal license to operate a wheat beer brewery near the border. When von Denberg's nephew died without an heir, his brewery was seized by Maximilian, the Great Duke of Bavaria and later Elector of the Holy Roman Empire. Maximilian had long harbored resentment as the von Denberg family's wheat beer had generated tremendous profits. He ordered the yeast to be taken from the brewery and brought to his own facility where the two strains were eventually combined. Roughly 5 years later, the Duke's brewery produced the world's first lager. Instead of just brown ale and wheat beer, they had created an entirely new kind of brew. And thus, lager was born entirely by chance. The shipwreck on the shore in Massachusetts. A woman walking her dog happened upon the remnants of a shipwreck that had lain hidden for nearly 150 years. Her name was Jessie Ahern, a resident of Nantucket Island. On what began as an ordinary afternoon stroll, she stumbled across fragments of wood and metal washed up by the tide remains of the Warren Sawyer, a two-masted vessel that had run ground on the night of December 22, 1884. The ship had been carrying a valuable cargo of cotton and scrap iron when it was caught in a fierce storm and thrown off course, smashing into the beach at Macomet. Over time, the wreck was gradually swallowed by sand and forgotten. Although the site of the wreck was loosely known, few had made any effort to locate it. Only when Jessie snapped a photo and sent it to the Massachusetts Board of Underwater Archaeology was the ship's identity officially confirmed, bringing to an end more than a century of silence beneath the dunes. The ancient weapons chest. In the murky waters of southern Sweden, a historical treasure lies submerged. Divers have discovered the wreck of the Gribs Hunden, a 15th-century Danish warship. The vessel sank in the year 1495 following a gunpowder-related fire. Inside this underwater time capsule, archaeologists uncovered something straight out of a pirate movie. A chest filled with tools for crafting lead bullets for early handheld firearms. Essentially, it was a medieval DIY ammunition kit complete with bullet molds and powder flasks. Why does this chest matter? It captures a pivotal moment in naval warfare. Before the age of artillery, warships often engaged like armored knights ramming and battling at close quarters. But the Grishunden's armory reveals a shift toward modern tactics in gunpowder weapons. A trend that wouldn't become widespread for another century. Archaeologist Remeng, who led the discovery, used photogrammetry to create a 3D model of the chest. This allowed his team to reconstruct its design and trace its origins. It likely belonged to a group of German-speaking mercenaries serving under the Danish king. At the time, they were possibly preparing to force Sweden back into the Kalmar Union, a kind of medieval Scandinavian Avengers when disaster struck. The ship also held other relics, including chainmail armor and onboard battle platforms, an early version of what snipers today might call a firing nest. According to Warming, these platforms may be the origin of the nautical term for castle and dispactional tiak, and despering the mating the rare Maya god statue. In Mexico, archaeologists have just uncovered an incredibly rare stone statue depicting a strange Maya deity, known as Kawil Raman. The discovery occurred during construction of the Maya train, when workers unearthed part of the statue beneath layers of jungle soil. In Maya belief, Kawil represents power, prosperity, and abundance, but also greed and arrogance, two serious sins in Christian theology. Diego Prieto Hernandez, director of Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, called the find a highly significant cultural treasure during a recent press conference. According to Hernandez, very few sculptures of this deity have ever been found. Previously, only 3 statues were discovered in the city of Tehuacan, Puebla, and this is one of the first known examples recovered from elsewhere in Mexico. Ka often appears in murals, reliefs, and ancient manuscripts, but fully carved stone statues of him are almost unheard of. This particular statue was found attached to an altar. The lower half shows the face of a different god, but the head is clearly that of Kale. It's just one of many extraordinary discoveries made during construction of the Maya train, a tourist railway connecting some of the country's major archaeological sites. The route between Palenque, Chiapas, and Tulum has already been completed, but the broader project is still underway. To lay the tracks, crews have had to clear vast stretches of jungle. Throughout the process, archaeologists working alongside the construction teams have documented nearly 50,000 ancient structures, close to 1 million pieces of pottery, 500 human remains, and over 1,300 caves and underground cenotes. Among the findings, a Maya canoe near Chichen Itza, an 8,000-year-old skeleton discarded in Akumal, and the ruins of an entirely unknown city in Quintana Roo, now named Pal II, with over 300 separate structures. The sheer volume of artifacts has led the government to commission a new museum in the city of Mérida to house the findings. Still, the Maya train continues to face fierce opposition from environmental activists, who warned that the project may cause irreversible damage to Mexico's pristine rainforest ecosystems. The structures of Zakynthos, off the coast of Zakynthos Island in Greece, divers once believed they had discovered an ancient city with stone foundations, courtyards, and rows of pillars. But the truth turned out to be something entirely different. What they had actually found were bizarre geological formations. These ruins came in strange shapes. Some looked like tubes, others like discs, and a few resembled duck hut rings. Yet, scientists confirmed they had nothing to do with any lost civilization. Instead, They were the result of a natural phenomenon dating back to the Plian epoch 5 million years ago. Why were they mistaken for ruins in the first place? The area was first noticed by snorkelers who thought they had stumbled upon an ancient harbor. The structures resembled column bases and paved floors. But no signs of human life were found. No pottery. No tools. And that raised suspicion among archaeologists. To solve the mystery, Greek archaeologists from the Ministry of Culture teamed up with scientists from the University of East Anglia and the University of Athens. They used advanced techniques such as microscopy, X-ray imaging, and chemical analysis to study the mineral composition. What they discovered was that these ruins were actually fossilized segments of a natural pipeline system beneath the seabed formed without any human involvement. This had once been a place where methane gas and other hydrocarbons leaked from deep sediment layers. Over time, bacteria in the seafloor mud used the methane as an energy source and produced a cement-like crust around the structures. Geologists call this process concretion. And when those concretions became eroded and exposed, they were soon colonized by modern marine life, giving them the ancient weathered look. So what seemed like the remains of a forgotten city was actually nature's illusion. A clever trick played on modern explorers. Researcher Julian Andrews explained that while similar structures are often seen around deep-sea gas vents, finding them in shallow water was rare and extraordinary. No ancient city was found. But what emerged instead was a stunning geological wonder. It was as if Mother Nature herself had crafted a tale to mislead and mesmerize humankind. The head of Hercules. Archaeologists have just uncovered the marble head of Hercules. Not a skull, but the carved stone head of the legendary hero himself. It was discovered inside a Roman shipwreck near the island of Antither deep in the Iron Sea. The ship sank in the early 1st century before Christ, though the site was first explored more than 100 years ago and yielded countless treasures. Recent dives have uncovered even more. At some point after the wreck, a massive earthquake struck, burying the ship beneath enormous boulders. It wasn't until underwater archaeologists used inflatable lifting bags, compressed air, and sheer ingenuity to move the 10-ton rocks that they reached the treasure hidden underneath. Among the artifacts, the head of Hercules stood out as the crown jewel, a majestic addition to the growing collection of priceless relics from the legendary Antither wreck. The underwater circles. In 1995, divers off the coast of Japan stumbled upon a mesmerizing sight. Intricate circular patterns carved into the seafloor, strange and symmetrical like crop circles, but this time beneath the waves. For years, scientists were baffled. No one could explain what had created the mysterious shapes. The puzzle endured until the real artist was revealed. A tiny species of pufferfish never before documented. These miniature sculptors measured only about 5 in long. But they were masters of detail. Imagine a tiny pufferfish flapping its fins like a frenzied sculptor, churning the sand in a perfectly choreographed dance. The result? Circles stretching nearly 7 feet across, as tall as a basketball hoop. Why do they do this? The answer was surprisingly simple. Love. After the male finishes his underwater masterpiece, the female swims by for inspection. She approves. She lays her eggs in the center of the circle, while the male fertilizes them from the outside. No candle-lit dinner. No elaborate date. Just art. Once the eggs are laid, the female leaves. The male then stands guard, watching over the precious nursery for an entire week. But the circles aren't just decorative. They're functional. The patterns help channel water and fine sediment toward the center, creating a calm and warm environment where the eggs can safely develop. It's nature's perfect nursery, shielding new life from strong currents. These aquatic crop circles aren't random. They're biological wonders. Just like the nests built by birds to attract mates, they're yet another reminder of how clever nature can be when it comes to survival. The discovery delighted scientists because it offered a rare example of biology, providing a clear answer to a mystery that had baffled the world for years. Hitler's secret Antarctic expedition. at the command of Adolf Hitler. A top-secret expedition once set sail for Antarctica, and the events surrounding it are stranger than fiction. Some believe that after World War II, Hitler fled to Antarctica and lived out his final years in a secret ice-covered base. Others claim he believed in alien life beneath the South Pole and longed to harness their technology. The truth, of course, is less fantastical. In the late 1930s, Nazi Germany was preparing for war. In 1936, the regime launched a plan to achieve massive economic growth in just 4 years so that by the time war erupted, Germany would be fully equipped. One part of that plan was stockpiling raw materials, and among the most valuable was whale oil. Though obsolete today, whale oil in the 1930s was used in everything from food to bath soap. If the German population needed food hygiene, and light whale oil was essential. It was also used to make nitroglycerin, a powerful explosive. It lubricated war machines and weapons. Even sandbags and trenches were soaked in whale oil to prevent decay. During World War I, an estimated 58,000 whales were killed, mostly for their oil. The whaling industry was dominated by Norway, and most whaling stations were under British control. Germany couldn't access enough of the supply, so Hitler decided the nation must become self-sufficient and Antarctica would be their new oil frontier. In 1936, a German expedition was organized to Queen Ma Land. The vessel Schwabanen left Germany in 1938 with 82 scientists and only one Nazi officer on board. The mission was led by Alfred Richer. The voyage itself was uneventful. The team conducted ocean surveys, took aerial photographs, and returned home. But then the war began, and the Antarctic plan was permanently scrapped. In truth, the stories of secret Nazi bases or bunkers beneath the Antarctic ice are just rumors, never supported by evidence. When the records of the secret expedition were declassified years later, all that remained were dry logs and ship diaries. If Hitler ever did go searching for aliens beneath the ice, no trace of that quest survives. The bones of King Alfred. Inside a plain cardboard box at a museum in Winchester, a fragment of a human pelvis lay in silence for many years. Few suspected it could be the remains of a legendary king. Scientists at the University of Oxford performed radioarbon dating on the mystery bone and concluded it may have belonged to King Alfred the Great, or perhaps to his son, King Edward the Elder. But the bigger question remains. Why was this bone kept in a paper box? And who exactly was King Alfred? Alfred was the first true king of a united England. He was the first to rule over the entire land, and the only English king in history ever granted the title the Great. His greatness came from saving England from Viking invasion. He won many battles, most notably the Battle of Edington in the year 878. After his victory, Alfred allowed the Vikings to settle in a small region of the kingdom. He gave the Danes control over East Anglia and the Midlands and persuaded their leader Guthrum to convert to Christianity. Alfred also liberated London and proved himself a master strategist. When Alfred died in the year 899, likely from a combination of Crohn's disease and severe hemorrhoids, he was buried at Oldminster. But 4 years later, his remains were moved to a newly built church called New Minster. Almost 2 centuries after that, Newster was demolished by King Henry I. Alfred's remains, along with those of his son, were relocated to a new monastery at Hyde Abbey. But in the 16th century, under King Henry VIII, Hyde Abbey was dissolved and fell into ruin. The royal tombs were forgotten. In the 18th century, a prison was built on the former abbey grounds. A local warden built a garden for his wife. And during the landscaping, workers stumbled upon a strange stone coffin. It may have been King Alfred's lost tomb. But instead of preserving it, they dismantled the coffin, sold the metal for scrap, and discarded the bones. In the 1990s, the first official archaeological dig began at the site. That's when the bone fragment was recovered and later placed inside a cardboard box. It wasn't until 2002 that Oxford researchers dated the fragment. The results matched the time of Alfred's death. It could be his or it could belong to his son. No one can say for sure. But it might just be the last surviving relic of the greatest king England ever had. The ancient petroglyphs of Hawaii. On the shores of Oahu, a rare natural phenomenon revealed ancient mysteries. Sudden massive waves swept away over 3 m of sand, exposing petroglyphs carvings believed to have been made by early Hawaiians. These enigmatic engravings depict figures, animals, and unidentified symbols. They had been buried beneath more than 10 feet of sand for centuries, and are thought to date as far back as the 18th century or perhaps even the 1st. Dr. Kikoa Kikiloi of the University of Hawaii explains that locals call them ki poku, meaning stone images. They were carved using hard stones into softer volcanic rock. Archaeologists believe these carvings tell a story perhaps related to spiritual rituals, ancestral deities, or something entirely different. Tragically, just days after their discovery, shifting sands buried them again completely, until nature reveals them once more. Their secrets remain hidden. The Archon entities. There is a hidden truth about this world. Earth is ruled by malicious, ruthless beings capable of warping the essence of reality. They bend thoughts, feelings, and actions without the individual even realizing. But fear not. These creatures exist only within the universe of ancient Christian Gnosticism. They are known as Archons entities, born of darkness. For more than a millennium, this belief was meticulously erased by the Church. In the early days of Christianity, just after the crucifixion of Jesus, various sects emerged with radically different beliefs. Followers of Gnosticism believed the world was created by a supreme being called the Demiurge, and that the Archons served as his agents. No other Christian branch embraced an ideology as bizarre and esoteric as Gnosticism. One of their texts, titled The Reality of the Rulers, describes Archons as gender-blurring creatures with animalistic faces, not fully human, not fully beast, born of chaos and mixing. Gnostic Christians viewed Archons with deep fear. They believed these beings stood between humans and eternal salvation. Citing passages like Ephesians 6 verse 12, "Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world." To Gnostics, Archons were those dark forces. In the ancient worldview, people didn't believe they controlled their own fate. They thought the soul was a battlefield between good and evil. And evil thoughts surfaced only when an external darkness invaded the mind. Archons embodied that ultimate shadow. If they had part in humanity's creation, they could easily manipulate. Yet, Gnostic believers remained Christians. They believed salvation was real, but only possible through divine light. They saw Jesus Christ as the flame that could free the soul from archonic influence. To them, Archons were demonic forces possessed by humanity. Only those enlightened by divine mystery could escape their grasp. That is why the Church sought to erase all traces of Gnosticism. It introduced a mysticism so extreme it remained unparalleled for 2,000 years. The invisible whirlpools. The fear of being drawn into a massive invisible whirlpool deep beneath the ocean might seem like sci-fi. But underwater eddies are real. They are both mesmerizing and dangerous. What causes them? Powerful tidal currents driven by the moon's and sun's gravity can generate enormous whirlpools. The most infamous is the Maelstrom off Norway, known for sinking ships for centuries, inspiring legends of kraken dragging entire vessels into the abyss. But there's something even more unsettling. Not all whirlpools appear on the surface. Some form in the depths, invisible and far more perilous. These deep eddies arise when ocean currents flow around underwater structures such as seamounts, submerged mountains beneath the waves. In the year 2014, China's submarine number 372 experienced a horror. While traveling normally, it was suddenly sucked into an underwater trench. The pressure spiked so rapidly that a pipe ruptured and cedar flooded in. Thanks to calm and quick action, the crew shut valves and vented excess gas to stabilize buoyancy, saving the vessel from total collapse. Following the incident, the Guangzhou Oceanographic Institute began mapping underwater whirlpools around deep trenches off Hainan Island. Their goal is to not only protect submarines, but to better understand how water and sediment mix beneath the ocean's hidden currents. The 17th century bell or cauldron. What if a mysterious copper dome recovered from a shipwreck turned out to be one of the world's earliest submarines? This tale is not fiction. It began in 1980 when divers salvaged a copper dome from the Santa Margarita, a Spanish treasure ship lost in 1622 off the coast of Florida. For decades, the dome sat in the Mel Fisher Museum. Everyone assumed it was a giant cooking cauldron, but recent research suggests it might actually be the top of a diving bell from the 17th century. A diving bell is an early submarine, a large cup-shaped chamber that traps air, allowing divers to breathe underwater. Picture Jack Sparrow and Will Turner walking under an upturned ship. Only in reality, marine archaeologists Shaw Kingsley and Jim Sinclair, who documented the dome, noted its size and form matched descriptions of early diving bells. It was far too large to be cookware and had no signs of combustion. Instead, it was constructed from two copper plates with thick rims and bronze rivets. Nearby lay a pile of iron ingots thought to have been used to weigh the bell down. Historical records show the Spanish pioneered diving bell technology. In the year 1622, Francisco Núñez Melén, a Spaniard, wrote about casting a diving bell. Could this dome be a remnant of that innovation? Kingsley and Sinclair believe so. The missing bottom section, probably made of wood and leather, would have degraded over time. The bell might have been big enough to hold 3 divers and connected to an air hose. Its discovery matters greatly because the Santa Margarita salvage yielded 350 silver bars, thousands of gold coins, and 8 bronze cannons. Perhaps this very device played a key role in that success. The metal spheres. What happens when a Harvard astrophysicist decides to embark on a treasure hunt beneath the sea? The result is a search for possible alien artifacts buried deep under the Pacific Ocean. This is the story of Avi Loeb and his team's journey to uncover what may be the oldest fragments of the universe ever recovered. Who is Avi Loeb? Picture a man in a white lab coat, but wearing an Indiana Jones hat minus the bullwhip. Loeb is a theoretical astrophysicist from Harvard University, and he's been chasing clues about a mysterious meteor that plunged into the Pacific Ocean. Was it just an ordinary rock from space or something far stranger? Possibly a relic from a distant galaxy. The adventure began in June of 2023 off the coast of Papua New Guinea. With $1.5 million in funding from entrepreneur Charles Hoskinson, Loeb and his team launched the research vessel Silver Star. Their mission to locate fragments of a meteor labeled IM-1, which had entered Earth's atmosphere back in 2014. It wasn't until 2019 that Loeb and his student Amir Siraj found government data suggesting the object came from outside the solar system. By 2022, the U.S. Space Command confirmed the finding, and Loeb immediately set his sights on the ocean floor. So, what did they find? More than 700 tiny metallic spheres. At first glance, they might seem unremarkable, but these spheres were anything but ordinary. Preliminary tests showed they could be of extraterrestrial origin because their elemental makeup was unlike any known meteorite on Earth. In a blog post, Loeb described the discovery as historic. For the first time in human history, we might be holding physical matter from a large object that originated beyond our solar system. Just imagine these metallic grains may have traveled farther than any astronaut or even the Voyager spacecraft. What made Loeb so confident these were alien artifacts? The answer lay in their unusual composition. What he called Bilau, a combination of beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium. That specific mix is not found in natural meteors, and does not resemble any cosmic material previously recorded. This wasn't Loeb's first time stepping into the world of extraterrestrial hypothesis. In 2017, He proposed that the interstellar object Oumuamua might actually have been an alien spacecraft powered by solar sails. Although that idea was met with skepticism in the scientific community, it didn't deter Lo's passion for exploring the cosmos or the ocean. During the IM-1 expedition, Lo's team used a magnetic sled to sweep the ocean floor, essentially the world's largest and most unconventional metal detector. Their persistence paid off when the strange spheres began to surface. Analysis of the recovered samples is now underway at some of the top research institutions, including Harvard and UC Berkeley. Lo has no plans to stop. He's already preparing for a return to the depths of the Pacific, determined to uncover more clues about our interstellar visitors. The underwater city of Cuba. In the year 2001, during a joint Cuban-Canadian expedition, researchers made a shocking find. Deep beneath the waters off Cuba, sonar revealed a structure resembling a city positioned over 700 meters below sea level. Many speculated it might be Atlantis. But is there any real basis for that? One theory suggests the city sank due to a massive tectonic event, an earthquake so intense it collapsed the region. But Professor Grenville Draper at Florida International University considers that highly unlikely. He notes that even the tectonically active Mediterranean hasn't shown evidence of such a catastrophic event. If not an earthquake, then what? Could it be the remnants of a submerged civilization built by advanced underwater architects? That seems improbable, unless ancient humans wore diving suits. The truth is, no one knows exactly how a city could end up at such depths. What's strange is that this isn't the only such find. In his book, Underworld, The Mysterious Origins of Civilization, Graham Hancock lists similar submerged structures around the globe, though most are found in shallower waters under 120 m, consistent with known ancient sea level changes. So, why is the Cuban structure so deep? A more radical hypothesis proposes that the Caribbean basin was once dry land only to be flooded later. Imagine a vast landmass now submerged. What if early humans built cities there before seawaters claimed them? Ancient sources like Aristotle, Galileo, and Ply the Elder described the Mediterranean rising catastrophically. Could the Caribbean have experienced a similar fate? For the Caribbean to have been a dry basin, two conditions had to exist. A land bridge connecting islands into one block and evaporation exceeding rainfall to keep it dry. Today, the Caribbean is dry enough around the equator that evaporation is significant. It's possible this held true in prehistory. A seismic event or erosion could have breached a natural dam, flooding the region. More interestingly, the Taino people, indigenous to the Caribbean, have legends of a great flood that drowned their world, described metaphorically as an empty gourd shell turned into a great sea. Could that tale preserve memory of this actual flood, explaining how a city now rests over 700 m underwater? So, there may be more lost cities waiting to be discovered. Or perhaps the sonar reflections mere illusions. Not ancient ruins at all. Ancient remains. In the year 1985 on Umana Beach in the South Shetland Islands of Antarctica, scientists made a discovery that no one expected. It wasn't the skull of a dinosaur or a long-extinct beast, but the skull of a young indigenous woman who once lived in southern Chile. The skull was more than 100 years old, placing the woman's death sometime between 1819 and 1825. Though just around 2 centuries old, it remains the oldest known human relic ever uncovered on the Antarctic continent. The site where the skull was found was once a 19th-century seal hunting camp. Back then, only men were involved in such expeditions, making the presence of a woman in this isolated place all the more baffling. Perhaps she had been taken captive and transported from Chile. Or maybe she had simply chosen to accompany the hunting party. The truth remains a mystery that no one has yet solved. Regardless of the circumstances, the discovery could one day play a pivotal role in shaping the future of Antarctica. Today, the continent is governed by an international treaty that allows only scientific research. But when that treaty expires in the year 2048, the world's nations are expected to compete fiercely for the right to exploit Antarctica's untapped resources. And in that battle for territorial claims, the skull of a young woman lost for centuries in the ice could become a powerful symbol of Chile's historical presence in the farthest reaches of the southern world. If you found these mysterious stories fascinating, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming discoveries. See you in the next video.